Let me look this up. German wedding tradition, castle. Kidnap?
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Chat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash Paisan MacKenzie.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, Watchmen, and now Westworld Season 4 on HBO. Find all the information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. Finally, to hang with us live all week long, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
So, Gene, this week for one of our great listeners, Kiki, we will be going back to 1993 and reviewing the romantic black comedy starring Mike Myers, So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Well, and Kiki wrote in and said, first time I ever watched this movie, I was alone. My apartment had burned down. The whole building was engulfed in flames, and I was sitting in an empty chair. I had nothing but a weird beanbag chair, my stereo, and my computer. I sat there on my weird beanbag chair, and I was so fucking sad. I didn't realize how sad I was, but I was so sad. I turned on this movie. I do not know how or why, but it saved me. I have never laughed so hard. I got up off my beanbag chair and I started to smile again. It's a fun movie that no one remembers, which is okay, but I'm not entirely sure how you'll score it, but I'm happy I made you watch it. Kiki.
Kiki, Ash and I were discussing before we hit record today, like how much we remember enjoying this movie too. So that feeling of smiling again. I got to ask the question though, what year it was when your apartment burned down? Because if it was like 1998, yeah, laughs all around. If it was like last year, first of all, I'm sorry. I hope you found a place. And secondly, wow, I don't know what mental state you were in at the time, but I'm glad it worked out for you. I'm glad this movie has special meaning to you. And Ash, you brought up the hypothetical about if your house was on fire, what you would save. Kiki's actually lived it. And apparently it was stereo, computer,
and weird beanbag
chair. Good choice, Kiki. Well, So I Married an Axe Murderer is a 1993 romantic black comedy starring Mike Myers and Nancy Travis. Myers plays Charlie MacKenzie, a man afraid of commitment until he meets Harriet, who works at a butcher shop and is maybe a serial killer. The film received mixed reception from critics and did not fare well at the box office, grossing just over $11 million, but it has gained a cult following in the years since its release. A miniseries called The Pentaveret, based on the in-universe conspiracy theories mentioned in this film, was released in May 2022 on Netflix. So Ash, Big D, we always ask what your memories are of the movie we're covering. Today it is So I Married an Axe Murderer. Ash, we'll start with you.
So before I loved Adam Sandler, I loved Mike Myers. I was absolutely obsessed with Wayne's World. I thought it was one of the funniest things I had ever seen in my entire life. And I became obsessed with him. And I remember when this movie came out, I was obsessed with it. I think that early Mike Myers is pretty unmatched in terms of like the character that he's played. He's got this weird little butt cut. He's all young. He's fresh. He's on the scene. And I was really excited to go back and rewatch this movie. And I had shared with the guys guys beforehand, before we started recording, that I actually watched this thrice. I watched it 3 times because I was so confused by my reaction to it and my memories of the film not matching like my 2022 watch of it. So I watched this one 3 times, and Kiki, I really feel sure now that my score and my opinions are real because of the 3 times. And it was surprising how different this one was for me on rewatch.
Like you, Ash, I was Mike Myers obsessed in the 90s, and this movie came out on the heels of Wayne's World, which I think is a near perfect movie. I rushed out to see it. I thought it was absolutely genius at the time, and it actually inspired me to do a musical performance with my band in 9th grade as a final project in our Shakespeare studies. And thinking back on it, this is such an embarrassing kid moment because they brought the principal out, they brought the dean of students, they brought other classes over into our English class to see me do a beat performance with my band. And I said, Juliet, sweet Juliet.
Oh my God.
Virgin at age of 14.
You did not.
Don't want to marry. County named Perry.
Oh
would
God.
rather die than be wed. Star-cross Ed. Be love.
Oh my
Ed.
God.
Unliving.
Oh my
And
God.
the room was just silent.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I can tell that this is going to be one of those movies that maybe I will like more ironically after the review, because that was funnier than anything I saw on screen.
Agreed.
And growing up, I was of the age, I was born in 73. So I have memories of my parents sitting around and watching. I mean, the gold standard of SNL. Back in the late 70s, early 80s, I was too young to really get the humor. So I consider my SNL cast like the 90s cast. You got Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman, Chris Rock, Dennis Miller, Mike Myers, Kevin Nealon, who's fantastic. The late Norm Macdonald. Gene, he's dead, correct? I just want to make sure this is not a okay, I've got the nods. Yes, Norm Macdonald is dead. We got Mike McKinnon and Will Ferrell later on. They were funny. They were hilarious. Saturday night was a night to sit there and watch TV, but it never really translated to movies. And it seemed like they continued to try to force it. Mm-hmm. And they would base a movie on like a catchphrase or even the thinnest of little premises. I mean, The Night at the Roxbury. How do you make a movie out of that and think it's going to be a hit? Or The Ladies' Man, or Stuart Small Saves His Family. It's stupid. Or I'm Pat. So I don't remember watching this the first time, but this is surely no Wayne's World.
God, you just gave me a list of movies I need to check out.
No, you don't. Coneheads, no.
Coneheads is amazing.
Were there not at least like moments of genius in them? Like
It was
inside
amazing.
jokes where they can't be?
And
Come
I
on.
actually think Night at the Roxbury is a dumb movie, but there's 3 scenes in that movie that are funnier than like any movie in the last like 20 years.
Yeah, but you also thought that So I Married an Axe Murderer was a funny movie.
No, I watched Night at the Roxbury actually very recently and didn't have to watch it 3 times. So I'm just saying.
All right, well, let's put on our corduroy blazers, grab our cappuccinos, and hit that trailer.
Hi, my name is Mike Myers. Perhaps you recognize me from my recent motion picture, Wayne's World. Thanks. As you can see, I'm on the set of my new film in which I play a young fellow named Charlie, who gets a little more than he bargained for. For example, there's suspense. Have you heard of this case? Mrs. X. She murders her husband on her honeymoon, then she changes her identity and marries again.
I never heard of it, so what?
I think I'm dating Mrs. X.
The Justice Department reports an alarming rise in the number of poisoning murders across the United States.
It's a smart drink to improve your brain power. You like it, Charlie?
Thank you, no. There's action.
Charlie, there's something I've been meaning to tell you.
She's a killer. Charlie, she is not a killer.
And of course, there's plenty of romance.
What do you look for in a girl you date?
I know everyone always says sense of humor, but I'd really have to go with breast size.
You're lying on your side, totally asleep. I could just stick a needle in.
So, as you can see, It has all the elements of a truly great motion picture.
Oh,
Did I mention the axe murder?
Hello, sweetheart.
Missed me, darling?
Charlie MacKenzie is a popular local beat poet in San Francisco. His best friend Tony points out that Charlie is afraid of commitment and tries to invent any reason to break up with someone. The following day, Charlie goes to purchase a meal for his dinner with his Scottish-born parents, Stuart and May. There, he encounters a butcher named Harriet and develops a slight crush on her. During Charlie's visit to his family, his mom brings up an article in the tabloid that describes a character known as Mrs. X, a bride who kills her husbands on their honeymoons using an axe.
Okay, so I think we can agree that the 90s are iconic for music. I mean, you got a lot of the pop stuff, you got the grunge, and this movie tries to capitalize on that, but it seemed like they went the cheap route because we get some 90s pop cheese. The Spin Doctors, I almost fell out of my chair. I was like, yes, it brought me right back. Suede, you got a song by Big Audio Dynamite, Soul Asylum, you got to have Toad the Wet Sprocket, but none of it was really the big hits, you know? And the fact that they made this situation even worse when they do a bootleg knockoff of There She Goes, no less than 4 times. The movie opens with it, closes with it, and we get 2 separate montages with this song.
Okay, let's pump the brakes. First of all, Suede is never cheese. You need to take that back. You need to eat your cheesy words. The Spin Doctors, I agree with you, Big D. They are the distillation of 90s feel-good rock. And There She Goes, I think was meant to be a reprise. You know, I went into this review ready to take a dump on this movie and already got me sticking up for the music. What did you want? Did you want Nirvana and Temple of the Dog? What do you mean cheap?
No, you could have given me the Sixpence None the Richer version. You know, spend some money. Don't give me who the hell, honestly.
Was that even out at this time? Because that's like in like 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah, it's not like they went with like Big Head Todd and the Monsters or something.
Who is Bo Radley? Who is Bo Radley?
It's the Boo Radley.
Yes.
They're based on To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh, that's bootleg.
Anyway,
God.
Anyway, Big D, I also agree. This movie made me miss the 90s. And I think we've reached a point now in 2022 when like high school kids and college kids are having 90s days during Spirit Week. And that makes me feel incredibly old. But when they do it, these kids are dressing like the Fresh Prince or Britney Spears or like the cast of Clueless. And that's fine. They can have their fun. But my 90s look more like the opening scene of So I Married an Axe Murderer. It made me incredibly nostalgic. The packed coffee shop, the giant-ass cappuccinos, clove cigarettes, slam poetry. And most importantly, what I noticed is that as they're panning through this coffee shop with the camera, nobody has a uniform aesthetic. Everyone in this movie is just kind of doing their own thing style-wise. And it's all creative and daring and odd, and it made me want to throw on my thrift store suits from the 90s and grab my poetry book and walk through the long shuttered doors of a Senza coffee shop in Mesa and just do one more set.
Yeah, I'll make you feel even worse is that they don't dress like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and shit like that at school. They do like their best like goth or grunge impersonation. And so I recently had to do this at a recent like Spirit Week thing that I was forced to participate in. And I went in my closet and just pulled shit that I've had since high school and just put on like a band t-shirt and jeans and Doc Martens and a black sweater. And that was it. And it was cold. So I threw on like a beanie, right? Like, and that was it. Like, it's my normal, like I'm going to the grocery store look still at the age of 38. And I can't tell you how many people are like, oh my God, is that vintage? Like, that's so cute. And I'm like, great. So it's pretty gross out there. But I want to just say, so the beat poetry part, right? Everybody remembers that. You obviously were so inspired, you embarrassed yourself in front of your whole school, Gene, because of how how great we thought it was. It felt when I was a kid, and maybe this is too much. Maybe I'm remembering this with nostalgia glasses, but it felt like revolutionary. It felt like cool. And unfortunately, as much as like I thought I liked Mike Myers, when I actually started to watch the movie, this beat poetry part was pretty insufferable. And y'all, and I know we're about to get a 1-star review, so I apologize in advance, but it was incredibly fucking sexist. And it wasn't funny. And I have to be honest, if I'm in the audience and a dude like this gets up there and he starts doing this shtick, I'm going to walk out every time he puts an ex-girlfriend's picture up without her consent on the board. And the way this guy looks, like there's no way he's getting these hot women. Like it felt really cringe in a way I did not expect. And I'm sorry, Kiki, this is where my 3-time watching began, because I was like, no, there's no way this is as bad as I think it is.
So I need to speak for 95% of our audience who's never been to a beat poetry session. How accurate is this, and how much comedy is this?
No, first of all, if it's a slam night, you're not allowed to have music or props. That's absolutely out. You get a microphone. That's it, right? So I don't know where this fucking jazz band came from and why no other poets were using it, but that's one. But yes, beat poetry is supposed to have like some sort of accompaniment there. This is absolutely inaccurate. If we were at a Senza coffee shop in 1994 where my mom would drop me off at the fountain at the edge of the parking lot so no one could see that I was getting a ride to it because I'm cool, you would go in, and if there was somebody pulling this bullshit, everyone would be like, fuck this dude. What the fuck's his deal? And get the hell out. He's like dancing up there. It's ridiculous. And watching this movie, I was more interested in the poet that was up before Mike Myers. Like that guy was cool. He's kind of neurotic, like weird dude throwing like massively long titles. That part's accurate. That's what you would expect to see. And honestly, Ash, I wish Mike Myers had embraced the fact that he had a whole writing team. He could have actually been a good poet. Wouldn't that be a twist, right? It's a funny movie. You're like, why are women into him? Why does he have his pick the litter? Because he's a fucking incredible poet with some emotional depth and hits us with something good. And you go, wow, fucking A, Mike Myers.
Right. This just felt like the comment section on Reddit when people get like dumped after going on like Bumble dates. That's what it read to me the whole time. It was gross.
So as the camera pans through this coffee shop and it finally settles on Mike Myers, he gets handed his cappuccino. We're like, okay, here we go. The movie's about to start. The star's on the screen. Let's see what he's got. And it just falls apart immediately. He's making coffee jokes. He's talking to the server. He's looking directly at the camera. He's talking to his buddy. It's bad. And I realized that I haven't seen Mike Myers not play a character up until this movie. And it reminded me of our old friend, Roger Roper. When Roger and I used to hang out, he once explained to me that he uses cosplay as a way to find purpose and personality in social settings. That if he goes into a place just as himself, he doesn't know what to do, what to say, how to interact with people. And that's why he worked at Disney World. That's why he was Albert Gator at the University of Florida. It's why he dressed up as the outlaw George Washington to my AO Abe Lincoln at soccer matches. And I think Mike Myers is the Roger Roper of the acting world. Like you give him Austin Powers, Wayne Campbell, Dr. Evil, even Stuart MacKenzie. He's pretty funny. You make him be himself and he's absolutely insufferable. His shtick consists of insulting people, acting too cool for school, and yelling, hello, a lot.
I have to tell you, when I was reading the notes, I went, holy shit. Like, I think like it's like the thesis of Mike Myers' whole career here, because you're completely right. He is so great at putting the skin of other people on. And more so than that, he's great at creating ridiculous characters that wouldn't exist in the world. But unlike a Will Ferrell, I think is the perfect example, because Will Ferrell is another one who can put on like the skin of a character and like he's amazing. But Will Ferrell on his own is also really freaking funny, right? Mike Myers, you want to punch him in the face. And I remembered liking Mike Myers in this, but the second he walked in and he's all redheaded, which bad choice. He's super pale. He's got the butt cut, and I couldn't stand to watch him. And of course, Wayne's World is absolutely amazing. Like I would never touch that. It's a zero white movie, but it's not surprising that Mike Myers didn't go on to get other non-character roles after this. Like you don't see him in other things where he's just like starring Mike Myers. And he certainly never had that dramatic turn that we know like the best comedians eventually could do. Your Jim Carreys, your Will Ferrells, your Steve Carell's, even Adam Sandler. They eventually took that dramatic turn. What did Mike Myers do? He died in the depths of Shrek.
This movie makes me feel bad for everything bad that I said about Adam Sandler. Adam Sandler, I'm sorry. If you're out there listening, I was so unkind to you. I did not give you credit. I said you were a one-trick pony. You are Daniel Day-Lewis compared to Mike Myers. The reason he didn't get roles, Ash, is because he is a one-note, one-trick pony. He laughs at his own joke in every movie. Then he gives this little awkward like smile at everybody around him like, hey, am I being a douche? And it doesn't work. When you're not Wayne, it's not cute. Every movie he dresses up in costumes or he's got some set of glasses, like so we won't recognize who he is. He plays more multiple characters than Eddie Murphy did in his string of like the Nutty Professor and all those movies. That one you were talking about, Gina, the new Netflix thing he's doing, he plays 8 different characters. And it's because he's limited in what he can do. And it's just, he screams jokes, he gets louder and louder. And it's just, I don't need to see him running around in his tighty whities or his ass crack. And it's clear that Wayne's World, that was saved by Dana Carvey.
I feel like you just described Jerry Lewis.
Well, to do this, so people out there who are thinking we're harsh, right? I'm going to play for you the first 12 seconds of this movie and tell me if you can spot any of the things I just discussed or you think it's still a funny movie.
Excuse me, miss. There seems to be a mistake. I believe I ordered the large cappuccino. Hello! Look at the size of this thing.
It's practically a bowl.
It's like Campbell's Cappuccino. My size. Please, aidez-moi.
That's unedited.
No one would be friends with this dude. Like nobody would be friends with him. And he also has to follow up every hello with that weird thing where he squints his eyes and like laughs without making any sound. Like that's the shit. He says hello and then he does that. And I'm not violent. I'm a pacifist. I'm not like you guys. But like I want to punch him in the face.
Yeah, why would you want to be his friend? He bags on Tony's clothes and he's completely unaware that he himself is dressed like a fool. He makes fun of his mom. His mom's the coolest fucking person in the movie. And every time Harriet would laugh at his jokes with her weird smile that shows all of her gums, I was screaming like, he didn't earn that.
Yeah.
He didn't earn that. I was flashing back to Nuns on the Run. Like the bar is just so low for men at this point in film.
Yeah. And he's Canadian. Why is he always got to do a fucking Scotsman fucking gag? Why you got to make fun of the Scottish?
Well, he's Charlie MacKenzie. He's embracing the role. And when he's Fat Bastard, he's also Scottish.
Right.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's not his choice what the role is.
Oh, God.
Well, Charlie and Harriet start to date, and he meets her eccentric sister, Rose, who warns Charlie to be careful. Charlie learns Harriet used to live in Atlantic City, had been involved with a trainer in Russian martial arts, and in her sleep screams for someone named Ralph. He arranges a dinner with Harriet to meet his parents, who point out that she's their favorite of all his previous partners. While in the restroom, Charlie spots the article about Mrs. X and becomes panicked as he realizes Mrs. X's victims were a lounge singer in Atlantic City, a Russian martial arts expert, and a plumber named Ralph.
Okay, I completely understand, Gene, what you've been saying about the 90s, right? Like, I think the 90s were amazing. I have a nostalgia for the 90s the way I don't for the 80s. I think that's why shows like Stranger Things, they kind of slightly annoy me because that isn't my world. Like, the early 90s is the time I remember most fondly. I mean, there are times when I'm having like a bad week that I want to basically go live in the world of Clerks with like the way they dress, the music, maybe not work at a convenience store, but like basically all that was going on in their world at the time. But the one thing I don't miss about the 90s was the architecture and the houses and what movies back then tried to do to make housing look cool. Because there's this house that Harriet has, and who the fuck would design a house this way? Like, the worst part is you've got the shower upstairs, so you can see it from downstairs, and it's like the sexy shadow. But then you find out she's living with her sister. So why do they need sexy shadow sister bath time? And I understand, okay, all you listeners out there that are going to call me out on this, I get that this is a plot device, but it's a dumb plot device to put all the martial arts shit on one wall and all the weird Russian knives on another wall. It's like, we get it. We get that you're supposed to figure out she's the Black Widow, but it felt so heavy-handed and felt like Mike Myers' delivery of all of the jokes in this part of the movie just like really forced.
Okay, the apartment does look like the walls of a TGIF Friday. Like you just took things and nailed them up there. Like all of like the bladed instruments, whatever.
A Hard Rock Cafe. You're so right. It's like a Hard Rock Cafe.
But I got to say, maybe she was ahead of her time. I stayed recently in Miami at one of the top hotels. When you're sitting in the bedroom, the bathroom is a clear wall into the bathroom. The toilet faces the living area. The shower is open. And I'm thinking, under what situation are you like, hey, I got to go into the bathroom. Please just face the other way. Maybe she was ahead of her time.
Maybe I'm tacky because Sarah and I were like, ooh, when we got to Harriet's house. I want to be able to see my partner showering while I'm in the living room drinking my Cubby Wubby Womb Room tea. Sarah and I literally have a martial arts cubby at the house, and I would take Harriet's apartment in a heartbeat. I just want to know how all these blue collar people afforded these incredible spaces. Every place they live has an amazing view. Everyone is just gigantic. The only one that made sense was the MacKenzies, because they pointed out that they bought their house in the 60s when the median home price was less than $20,000. And now it's like $1.6 million in San Francisco.
So, and I thought this ended in like the 90s, early 2000s, but I went to go see that new Top Gun movie, Top Gun Maverick. And
don't spoil it.
I'm not going to spoil it, but okay. Tom and I were laughing the entire movie that his love interest in the film, she owns a bar. That's what she does for a living. And then like all of a sudden they're on like this like $500,000 yacht that she owns and is going to have the engine fixed. And then they go to her house and it's, you know, there in San Diego on the beach. It's beachfront property. And then at the end, she drives up in a Porsche and we're just like, what is happening right now? It's like those house hunter shows. So I guess they haven't stopped doing this in movies, but it's pretty ridiculous.
In a movie where Mike Myers can actually get an attractive woman to willingly take him to bed, I'm not focused on the price of the house. I know it's a movie. I can't get over that as Mike is sitting there in his tighty whities. And we get now, Gene, you mentioned the family house. We're going to go over to the house and we're going to meet the family. And thankfully, we're going to get a break from just Mike Myers. Oh, wrong. Who's going to play the dad? The Scottish Father Stewart? Yay. Let's get Mike Myers in some makeup and let's make the scenes awkward because you know they didn't have the budget to do some CGI. So the two of them always had to stay on the opposite side of the set. So you knew there was a split down the middle and they recorded it twice. It's ridiculous. But we get to meet the coolest character in the entire movie, Oscar winner from My Left Foot, Brenda Fricker, who I immediately recognized as the homeless pigeon lady from Home Alone 2. That I spotted her right away. And she has this wonderful breath of just fresh air. She's Charlie's mom. She loves him. She's supportive. And I love the fact that as cool as she is, and as much as she's proud to have been married for 30 years, my first laugh in this movie came when they're saying goodbye and she starts getting handsy with Tony at the door and she's molesting him. If the roles were reversed, we'd be upset, but she's grabbing his ass and she's all into him. And I'm thankful that she was in this movie because otherwise this whole thing would have been insufferable.
And Charlie doesn't understand how fucking cool his mom is. It was pissing me off. And the way he talks to her, like, Big D, would you dare talk to your mother the way Charlie talks to his?
No, he's an asshole.
Yeah, I've always had a super soft spot for moms. I absolutely love spending time with them. Like, they're truly the best people. They're the most interesting person in the house, usually. They're the most responsible person in the house, usually. They have the best stories. They actually know where things are. I play Wordle nearly every day with Sarah's mom, and I love to visit my mom just to hear her chat on the entire world around her. Like, I understand where I get it, and I just marvel that she can find an issue with every single thing in the world, but I'm not annoyed by it. I never, like, poo-poo her thoughts. I sit there and I go, yeah, you're absolutely fucking right. Even if she's dead fucking wrong and doesn't know that the Inquirer isn't a real journalistic publication.
Right. Instead, Stewart sits there for some reason mocking his son, who's got, it looked like an average size head.
No, it's a big fucking head.
I think it's hair. I mean, hair.
Come on, that line, go cry yourself to sleep on your huge pillow, is one of the funniest lines in the entire movie.
No, the only other good line he has is, we've got to pipe her down. We've got to pipe her down. Those are the only two lines. That's it.
Big D, you mentioned getting a break from Mike Myers. The true break from Mike Myers came when we went to the police station for that side plot. I was so relieved. I was like, oh, this movie's actually pretty funny when Mike Myers isn't in it. I'm so glad we got this side plot between Tony and his police captain that was played by Alan Arkin, who we saw in Grosse Pointe Blank. This is to me, the best part of the movie. And it's a welcome departure to the nauseating romance between Charlie and Harriet that's developing at this point. I'm not enjoying any part of that. The gist of this scene is like Tony wants police work to be like police work on TV, but he's stuck mostly doing paperwork. And his captain is like this super nice guy who just wants to talk with him and help him through his frustration. And at one point, like he even offers him a hug. And Alan Arkin is just so goddamn funny here. 10 times funnier than Mike Myers easily. And if you haven't explored this guy's library, he's phenomenal. It goes back to the 60s. But check out, if you like dramas, check out Glengarry Glen Ross. If you like comedies, Little Miss Sunshine is absolutely brilliant. This dude is incredible.
Oh, and it's obvious that this was done like on the side without Mike Myers around because it's unexpected and very, very funny. I did not see it coming. And the fact that his captain tries to give Tony what he wants in his little weird way, he's trying to be the good leader who's like, okay, how can I motivate Tony? And he tries to give it to him and he says, you screw up one more time, you're going to be writing tickets your whole life. And then he kind of pauses at the end. He's like, oh, was that a little bit too much with the ethnic slurs? Amazing man, amazing actor, and very funny.
A little too much.
Yeah, too much.
You know, getting back to the romance between Charlie and Harriet, you know, people always reflexively say that they are looking for a sense of humor in their partner, right? You always hear that, I want them to be funny. And I always ask why. Because, like, yes, sometimes you find that special someone who has a delightfully dry wit and makes you smile from time to time. But more often, when someone is described as funny, or people are like, you got to meet this guy, he's really funny, you get something like Charlie. And Charlie, like you said, Big D, makes me want to take back everything I said about Robbie Hart and The Wedding Singer. Because compared to Charlie, Robbie is the epitome of cool. Robbie is fucking Steve McQueen out there. I'm not sure that Charlie MacKenzie even cares about Harriet. All she is to him is like a captive audience for him while he's scaring away her customers, while he's mocking ballet in incredibly romantic environments, or while he's trying out his like failed stand-up material. There is no romance in this comedy. He's just a child bumbling his way around a woman.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I want to go back to your first point about like why people find humor funny. Like for me, I don't think I could ever be with somebody long term if they weren't funny, but not funny like this. Like I want somebody who's able to like have like what you're talking about, how like your mom shits on stuff. Like I want somebody who's funny in that way. That's like going to shit on everything around them, and it's funny when they do so. I think cynic humor, but I completely agree with you here about this movie. I think that they've got like the chemistry of like a third grade romance. Like there isn't a whole lot going on. And I think that Charlie is a kind of guy who looks really good on paper. Like you can check out his Bumble profile, his like eHarmony profile, and he seems all right. I can go out to dinner with him. But then you do. And by the time like dessert comes or he asks you to go like for drinks after dinner, you realize that he's like a one-line kind of guy. Like the guys who drop like those weird little comments that are one-liners that aren't actually that funny, that they aren't clever, that they're not actually smart, because the funniest people are really intelligent. And it made me wonder this whole movie why somebody as amazing as like Harriet is, because she's a cool chick and she's beautiful, why she'd put up with it. And then it dawned on me that it's like the plot, right? That all these guys die on her. So she figures, well, this is what I'm stuck with. This is the only thing I can get because I've lost all these other people and they keep dying all around me. But I can't believe if she didn't have all this tragedy around her, she would go for someone like this at all, because she's a lot more amazing than he is. And just look at the movie poster, listeners, if you don't believe us. Like if you think we're exaggerating, just go look at the movie posters and look at how beautiful she is and how ridiculous he looks with those flowers behind his back. Like he looks like a creeper, stranger danger.
I got to butt in on this one, though, because although I appreciate the fact that like Sarah is funny, it's not a key thing I look for in a person. I got plenty of friends that can fucking make me laugh. I don't need my partner to make me laugh. It's not, I don't know. To me, it's like having a person who's like responsible, daring, adventurous, hot. Like that's important. Funny, like Big D, do you have funny at the top of your list?
No, but funny is a way that people deal with tough situations. I think funny is more of a result of the way people have an outlook on life. If things get tough, they're not the ones to run away. They're the ones who can roll with it. The ones who have the attitude that, hey, we'll get through this. I'm kind of relaxed. I'm carefree. We'll laugh through this together.
Yeah, funny and intelligence. Humor and intelligence. I can't live without both.
But you guys say he looks good on paper. What does he look like on paper? Does Charlie actually have a job? Is he a professional avant-garde poet? Is that what he does for a living? Does he have an apartment? He's got this shitty convertible, but that seems to be all we know. The fact that he only has one person willing to come out and say that they're his friend, Tony, that should be a red flag to anyone looking to date him.
So he does have an apartment with a gorgeous view, which again, I don't get how he affords, because in the original screenplay, you find out that his job is bookstore manager. And let us thank the movie gods, the Shat gods, that we didn't have to see this scene in the movie. Because you imagine how insufferable he is as a customer at the coffee shop, how insufferable he is at the butcher shop, how insufferable he is as a performer. In the screenplay, he's working at the bookstore and tourists come in asking for really cliche and trite things like Jack Kerouac books and books on poetry, and
Gross.
He blows them all off. In one scene, he doesn't even look at them. He just like points in the direction where the book is because he knows what they're coming in to ask for, because Charlie is so cool. Let's be thankful we didn't have to see that.
It's like Jack Black's character in High Fidelity, but just not as funny or talented, because he turns out to be really talented at the end. I mean, I know that's music, but I hate those kinds of characters.
Well, Charlie asks Tony to investigate Harriet and the Mrs. X story. Tony checks it out and says Harriet is unlikely to be Mrs. X. Charlie remains on edge and eventually breaks up with Harriet. Tony later reports that a killer in the Mrs. X story has confessed, and Charlie wins Harriet back with beat poetry. At his parents' wedding anniversary, Charlie proposes to Harriet, and she reluctantly accepts. After they leave for their honeymoon, Tony learns that the confessed killer is actually a compulsive liar. He believes Harriet is the killer, so he charters a plane to the remote inn where the couple is staying. Once he lands, he's able to call Charlie and warn him that Harriet is Mrs. X, but the hotel phone line is knocked out and power is lost.
I don't know. I think I have two problems with this part of the movie. The first is, and I'm sure it was like Mike Myers who told them to do this, but Harriet goes like all Christian Bale Batman voice. Like the second he gets paranoid, she starts acting like hella weird. She starts acting super suspicious. And I think that Mike Myers thought this would be funny in some way, but it feels really obvious. And I think it's way below Nancy Travis's own acting ability. She's a lot better than this, and she can handle a lot more. And the other issue that I have is like, Charlie is an asshole. Like, he's not really a good guy. Clearly, I mean, we've talked about humor and them being hot and all that shit, but obviously one of the most like fundamental things about a relationship is trust, right? And he clearly doesn't trust the partner that he's with. You think that maybe she's trying to kill you, that she's killed all these other people, and then figuring out, well, maybe she didn't. And so your solution is to bring her back with some lame beat poetry. Like, it all just doesn't work for me. And I don't get why she would go back to him, because forget the whole plot line of the axe murderer. This dude is a huge commitment phobic. And I know that in the 90s, this was a really big thing for guys to be commitment phobics and it to be funny. Like, oh no, we're afraid of marriage. But it's not funny anymore. And maybe that's one of the reasons this movie I don't find funny anymore. But the fact that Harriet goes for him after that lame attempt, the movie just really fell flat for me from there through the end.
Also, Ash, talk about a missed opportunity. They could show him doing the beat stuff at the beginning, but after he loses her and feels that pain and wants her back, he should do a serious poem, something really romantic. That could change the whole movie. And as far as her voice changing and her acting all weird, I think it's meant to illustrate that Charlie is paranoid. And I fell into this trap a lot as a kid. So I get what he's doing here. I would meet someone eccentric and exciting, and then I would convince myself that her eccentricity fit my Kerouac-inspired worldview of only wanting to be around people who sparkled and burned with wildness. And then you start to be around them and you think about being around them long-term, like introducing them to your family, like having to do normal things with them. And eventually you abandon them. I will be the first to say I did this repeatedly. It was a shitty thing to do. I was Charlie in a lot of those cases. But what I didn't do is try to get them back with bad poetry, at least after about age 33.
Gene, you are a bad man. You weren't too nice.
I grew up fat, so it's okay. That's the rules, right? Isn't that the rules?
That is not the rules.
No. Anyway, we talked about Alan Arkin and his amazing work in this movie. And at this point in the movie, we've seen Alan Arkin. I mean, check out this cast. Debbie Mazar, which I said Mazar when she was in Goodfellas. I think it's Mazar. Michael Richards, that bug-eyed dude, Mike Haggerty with the mustache. Phil Hartman, Amanda Plummer. All of them are in some of their best film roles here. And they didn't need to be on camera long to be hilarious. Like, I was laughing at everything these people did. And I'm starting to think either Mike Myers is the most well-liked guy in Hollywood, or this production team for So I Married an Axe Murderer made some brilliant moves. And then just what I'm thinking, this is a delicious movie as far as comedy outside of Michael Myers. We get the icing on the cake. We get Stephen Wright as a pilot talking about having a dream that he was born 8.5 months too early. And then we get Charles Grodin refusing to let Tony commandeer his car. I basically laughed at everything when Mike Myers wasn't there.
Yeah, and Gene, this is one of those cases where I think doing the podcast makes you uncover something that you wish you didn't know. So you were saying, why would he get this amazing cast? Is it because, it was a great production or everybody loved him? I'll tell you, Gene, that's not what it is. Because if you just Google Mike Myers hated, you're going to come across countless interviews from his co-stars. His co-star from The Cat in the Hat, she claimed that he has a sycophant who follows him around, and their only job is to provide Mike Myers with chocolates in Tupperware containers. Ugh. She characterized him as a diva who made the cast and crew wait while he micromanaged the entire production, and fellow actors aren't the only collaborators who think that Myers is just insufferable. There was a 2008 article which profiled Myers, and Wayne's World director Penelope Spheris got her own digs in, where she described Mike Myers as emotionally needy and saying that he got more difficult as the shooting went on. And I think that Myers knows this, because in a 2014 interview for GQ, he stated that since 1991, he has only received 15 scripts. So I think Myers knows that maybe this dick that we're saying, why would anybody like Charlie? Maybe that's more Mike Myers than anybody even knows.
And that's fucking incredible, because in Wayne's World, they have that scene where like they make it and they're lampooning themselves. You'd think he would see that and go, oh shit, that's me. Like that's who I've become.
Don't think he's self-aware.
Well, Charlie tries to stay away from Harriet without letting her know what he knows, but the hotel staff force him into the honeymoon suite for their first night together. After locking Harriet in the closet, Charlie discovers a Dear Jane letter purportedly written by him explaining his absence to Harriet. Suddenly, Rose appears wielding an axe. She tells Charlie he was not supposed to find the letter, and she reveals herself as the Mrs. X killer. She feels that Harriet's husbands are taking her sister from her, motivating her to kill them on their wedding moon night and leave Dear Jane letters behind claiming to be from them, leading Harriet to believe that each husband simply left her.
So there are so many movie actors from the 80s and the 90s that you see them and you're like, oh man, this is great. I remember them. I remember them in all these roles. And one of them was from last week when we had Nettie on Needful Things. And we're like, oh, I can't believe that we haven't seen her. We've done 280 movies for Shat the Movies. What are the statistical chances, okay, that we've not done really anything by her? And in the span of 3 weeks, we get 2 movies where Amanda Plummer, in a bout of rage, of violence, tries to kill somebody with a bladed weapon, an axe or cleaver. What are the chances?
Yeah, she just picked up where she left off. She's like, you're not supposed to find that while she's here. She was fantastic. I think we just missed a chance at a trifecta. If we had done Pulp Fiction, the week after this, we get Plumber on Plumber on Plumber.
Just tons of violence.
Triplum. Yeah.
Triplum.
Oh, and speaking of violence, I think the biggest piece of evidence that Harriet might be a serial killer is that this is where she wants to honeymoon. Because I didn't understand this place. I have a question about why they would go to a place that's clearly only for old people. What's there to do there? Is it a bed and breakfast? Is it meant to be romantic? They're eating dinner in this tiny little room with all these other people around them. It reminded me like of being on a cruise where you get assigned to your table, but without the locations and the beach. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is just like a pit stop along the way to their actual honeymoon, but it seemed like a strange choice. But I will say the one thing I like about this locale is you get what I think is one of the funniest parts of the movie is when Rose comes out, speaking of Amanda Plummer, when she comes out in that crazy ass raincoat with that axe. It was so funny. That was the best part of the movie, at least in the back half. But overall, this end feels like a really odd choice.
But I think they were going, was it Poets Corner? They said that this place was something with poetry. because they mentioned that like some of the biggest poets had gone there. So I think maybe this hotel is famous for that. Gene, you're the poetry expert in your beatnik days. Do you remember any of this?
I mean, I clearly wasn't paying attention at this point in the movie, I guess, but I was very keen on this spot. I mean, again, Ash, I think my decor and vacation ideas are just very, very different. It's creepy. There's old people everywhere. And have you guys not been paying attention? Because this is Harriet. Harriet, the woman who debated how you define brutality in a murder. Like, she's a fucking weirdo.
See, but you're defining it as a vacation. This is a fine vacation spot, but this isn't a vacation. This is their honeymoon. Like, that's a big deal. Like, you go all out for your honeymoon. They go to an inn that's a bed and breakfast with a bunch of old people. It's weird.
Well, I mean, clearly they spent all their money on rent.
Yeah, it's called the Poetry Quarter Hotel. This is a real thing. I guess this is where poets go. So I guess that's why they went there. But what place would you be okay with if you're having dinner and they say, "Oh, pick them up in the chair. Let's carry them to their wedding bed." This is like the red wedding
ceremony.
The red wedding's the last time I remember this.
Are you guys aware of the German tradition where like they go in the castle and you've got to chase the bride from like room to room or whatever? I love this shit. I think this shit's great.
Do tell. What is she like actually trying to avoid?
So technically, it's like I believe that it's based on a tradition, but I believe they kidnap the bride, they take her to a castle, you go to the castle, and there's a party in every room. Let me look this up. German wedding tradition, castle. Kidnap? I don't know. This might have been a dream I had. But anyway, I think it'd be absolutely fantastic.
Let's play Das Blümchen, yes.
Well, Tony leads the police into the hotel, but he arrests Harriet, still believing her to be the murderer. Charlie, having been chased to the hotel roof, pursued by Rose, is able to get Tony's attention as they prepare to take Harriet away, prompting Tony to run up the stairs to the roof to intervene. Rose swings the axe at Charlie and is thrown off the building, with only Charlie holding her up from falling to her death. Tony snags Rose through a window and arrests her, and Charlie and Harriet resume their lives afterward as a happy couple.
So as the movie now is coming to the end, I could not help but feel the film was getting desperate with the jokes. Earlier on, we get a scene where Charlie comes out to hug Ralph and he drops his towel and he's naked. I thought that was the low point in the movie, but the movie said, no, hold my beer. They're up on the roof now. They're being chased around. Charlie is dodging an axe. And we get back-to-back hitting the balls jokes out of the blue within 2 minutes. Charlie's sliding down. He hits the vent pipe. Oh, he rolls around. He gets up. Then Rose kicks him. And then again, he goes down. Gene, as the only other member of the podcast who has testicles, I'm not making an assumption, Ash. I've never asked you about your genitalia at the moment. But Gene, as the only one who can attest to the feelings of having your testicles struck, do you think that you would hit that bad and the pain would be so bad that these movies show that you couldn't defend your life?
So this will come as no surprise to anyone, but I get kicked in the balls about once every few weeks. I'm generally wearing a cup while sparring, and it definitely like makes me at least wave off my sparring partner, right? Like I am not fit to be fighting at that moment. I need 30 seconds to a minute to get my shit back together. But in a life or death situation, I think I could probably fight through it. But Mike Myers, he doesn't just drop. He's not like, oh, fuck, I got kicked in the balls, I'm done. He does this thing where he still cannot resist the urge to do a dumb look at the camera, that annoying eyebrow raise, like, and then he does that double chin thing, like, ugh! It's just, like, I was really building up some momentum at this point in the movie, and he has to ruin it again and again. And I know I complained when Ice Cube somehow knocked out Debo in Friday, but could Mike Myers be any more feeble in this final scene? I mean, Big D, you talk about betas like Robbie Hart. This guy is uber beta, right? Harriet is a woman worth fighting for. She's beautiful. She's a butcher. She's interesting. And Rose, yeah, she's got an axe, but she's not a particularly big or threatening woman.
No.
This motherfucker abandons his new bride. He runs out the window while she is locked up in a room with an axe murderer. And then he spends a half hour scrambling around a rooftop, racking his balls on chimneys and being an absolute disgrace to all that is manhood.
And she's got the little baby axe. It's not even like a big axe.
Hatchet.
It's more like, I was about to say, it's more a hatchet.
Yeah.
Like, so I married a hatchet killer.
Yes.
But this is Mike Myers' kind of comedy, right? The physical humor that you see here is almost shot for shot in all the Shrek movies. And I personally, I don't know about you, Big D, because you have kids, you have Emma who probably watches them, but I think they're an absolute abomination. I think they're not funny. I think they're disgusting. And I would argue that Adam Sandler, who I am so glad that we're finally getting justice for on this podcast after our Wedding Singer episode, that even in The Wedding Singer, he's so much funnier than anything that Myers does here. And here's my prediction, right? So Rose goes to jail, the hatchet goes away, and Harriet divorces Charlie within 6 months because she realizes that with Rose gone, she can have whoever she wants and she doesn't have to be stuck with this doofus.
I like that. But, before I was kind of hinting that maybe Harriet's not innocent here, I thought as the movie was going on that she was kind of covering for her sister, that she was being defensive, and that when she was getting paranoid, it was about, hey, what's Rose doing? Because she hides the previous wedding rings in her makeup. So there's only two possible explanations for that action. One, she's crazy and is actually helping Rose with the murder. Or two, she knows that Rose is the killer and she's hiding this and protecting her. And either one is dark, but she cannot be innocent and still hiding those rings.
I'm just glad we didn't get a dead Rose at the end of this movie, right? Because that's how movies usually end, is if she falls off the rooftop and dies, she lands on her own axe, whatever the fuck. It's like, she didn't deserve to die.
You mean like in Needful
Like Nettie.
Things?
Yes, like Nettie. Yeah.
Getting back on the German wedding customs, I want to touch on that before we close out the pod. So Big D, the Germans, they've got weddings figured out. So the two things I was thinking of, I did a mishmash of two different things. One is called Polternight. And on Polternight, they take stoneware and porcelain and smash it to chase away evil spirits. And then they burn the bride's bra and the groom's trousers and bury the ashes next to a bottle of schnapps. And then a year later, they dig it up and they drink the schnapps. Wonderful. But the more fun part is the abduction of the bride. So what happens is
the more fun part.
Yeah. So what happens is the best man goes and takes the bride and they go out for a night of drinking. Now you can do it at a castle where you drink from room to room until they find you, or you can go out on the town and go bar to bar drinking like on a pub crawl until the groom finds you. When the groom finds you, he has to pay off the dollar amount that you spent drinking, right?
Oh, wow.
And then he gets his bride back. But by that time, the best man and the bride should be super drunk. I feel like this could go wrong.
Oh, very wrong. There has to be stories of this going really, really wrong. Not only for just the size of the bar tab, but that you can't find them, that maybe they decided to go off somewhere alone.
Yeah, but a crowd of people put them in a chair and carried them to a honeymoon suite.
Exactly.
All right, well, now is the time in the podcast where we give our wipe score for So I Married an Axe Murder. Wipe score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie take off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is watching your team win the World Series of Soccer while living in your Bay Area home that you managed to purchase in the 1960s. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster of a movie, is going to bed with a man, scratching his back, and hearing him feign purring noises. Ash, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for So I Married an Axe Murderer?
So the biggest issue I have with this movie is that it wasn't as funny as I remembered it being. If you compare this to Mike Myers' other really big 90s films, especially Wayne's World, this doesn't come anywhere close. He's not funny when he's not playing a character. Again, Gene Lyons really hit the nail on the head with that. He's actually really insufferable. But the supporting cast is great. They do some really funny things. They're good at what they do. But I'm going to argue justice for that supporting cast. They deserve better. I think this is a below average movie, but it's not the worst thing I've seen. For me, it's 3 wipes.
Yeah, Ash, this is a tough one because the star of the movie is the only one fucking it up. Everyone else understood the assignment. They were really enjoyable. And the movie does get remarkably better after Charlie and Harriet get to their honeymoon hotel, and it switches to a bit more horror and a lot less Mike Myers comedy. And I realize this is because he starts to tone it down because he's afraid as opposed to being confident. And he should have really taken that cue through more of the movie. And I feel bad because I genuinely like Wayne's World, and I even like the Austin Powers series. But this movie would be best enjoyed as a series of YouTube clips of the funny parts, you know, maybe Tony and his captain in the police precinct, rather than watching the full movie. So for me, it's 2 1/4 wipes.
Oh, I agree. Gene, this movie does not work for me because I was looking forward to seeing the supporting cast and I wanted to find out what was going on the B plot. I wanted to see like Serpico Part 3, Tony and the Captain. I wanted to see them out in the street. That's funny. This movie did not have enough jokes. It's too much Myers. And unfortunately, this movie will ruin any chance I have of Mike Myers in the future. I mean, if you like Mike Myers, do not go read the article why it took Dana Carvey 20 years to forgive Mike Myers, because you won't like the man anymore. But I think his characters are much like the man, and it worked in Wayne's World, but it does not work in the rest of these. And it'll be interesting to see how this affects Austin Powers, because it's on our schedule coming up here shortly. So it will be an interesting one. For me, it's worse than average. It's 3.5 wipes.
So 3.5 wipes from Big D, 3 wipes from Ash. Kiki, don't forget who your friend is. Gene Lyons with 2.25 wipes. That's somewhat better than average. That gives us an average wipe score of 2.916 repeating wipes for So I Married an Axe Murderer.
So that now amazingly, Gene, with a score of 2.91 repeating wipes, that now ties us with 2 other films in the 192 spot. Flatliners and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, wow. That feels right.
This movie's pretty bad.
I think Ninja Turtles was buoyed by Roger Roper, though, right?
Of course it was.
He gave it like a 0 wipe, right?
Yes, 100%. You're correct. That is because Roger gave it a 0.75.
Right. That's ridiculous.
To counter that, I punitively gave it a 5 wipe, and you gave it a 3, somewhere in the middle. So, yeah, pretty bad. Well, Gene, this week we've got 2 quick voicemails. Our first one comes from Mookie, and she wants to talk about our diversity.
Hi, Shat Crew. This is Mookie calling from Houston. I've been listening to the podcast for years and love you guys. Love you, love you, love you. I've never written in or called despite wanting to multiple times, but I had to after listening to this Wedding Singer podcast and hearing, this is in air quotes, you can't see them, but Bing Rames just called. Now, let me tell you, honey, I love me some Bing Rames. That man can get it. He can get it. And I'm very familiar with his work. I'm very familiar with his voice. I don't think that was Bing Rames. Whoever that was, y'all need to ask for some proof. You need a picture holding a fork and the date of today's newspaper, something. That was not no doggone Bing Rames. But anyway, keep up the good work. And if you're taking any tips or suggestions, I highly recommend you getting a guest for movies that are made for Black people and or queer people who is Black and or queer, respectively. Let me just throw my name in the hat because I'm both of those things. And sometimes y'all, there are little tiny subtle things that you miss. And someone needs to point those things out for you and your audience. Just a thought.
So, Mookie, I think what would be great is if you look at our schedule that's coming up and you see a movie, I think if you called in and left a message, I think that's the easiest way to get people's contribution, especially if it's something that you're passionate about, something about your community. Look at our schedule. You can go onto the website. It is shatpod.com/movies/events. You can see what's coming up, and that way we could include it into the review instead of having it be an answer later on. But thank you very much for the call.
Yeah, early days of the pod, I remember we were so naive and so young and thought it was so easy to just slip people into the pod. Like, hey, let's get this friend to come on or that person. What we discovered is it typically takes, like even with the King Bee, coming back to do an episode with us, it takes a couple episodes to get warmed back up, to get into the flow, to feel it, particularly because we're doing this remotely, which is, I think, a fact that a lot of people forget about, right? Is that we're not all sitting in the same room just having a conversation. It's a lot less fun than you imagine. It's the 3 of us in our respective homes with screens of notes in front of us, doing and redoing takes because we got something wrong or misspoke. And when it does slip out, we get caught and we get the actuallys. But totally agree that we don't catch everything. That's absolutely true. And representation is very, very important. I think that's why it's wonderful that we do have Ash and me and Big D, 3 people coming from 3 different walks of life. But yeah, we are underrepresented when it comes to, having a Black voice on the podcast or having, a queer voice in the podcast. Guilty.
And our final voicemail comes from Teresa, who wants to talk about our Blood In, Blood Out podcast review.
Hey canales, this is Teresa, and this time I'm drinking a green shake, so no tequila buzz going on right now. So I just finished listening to your episode for Blood In, Blood Out, and I don't know if you guys mentioned that the movie's actually based on real life people. I think it's a poet who wrote the story about this, that the movie is based on. Also, Danny Trejo at the time served as a consultant as well as other gang members. So that's why there's so many nuances in this movie, and it's just probably a more accurate portrayal of gang life, I guess, in East LA. But also at that time, Edward James Olmos made a movie called American Me, and he didn't ask for permission. He didn't reach out to gang members, and so he really, they made his life miserable while he was filming the movie. And I know that Danny Trejo mentions it in his autobiography. Anyway, guys, have a great night. Kisses. Bye-bye.
So 2 things there. First, thanks for calling in. One is, there are a few movies that make me want to dig. I mentioned this on the podcast too. There are some few movies that make me want to dig deeper and deeper into the making of the story behind. And I've been obsessed with Blood In, Blood Out. I'm actually wearing my Life's a Risk Cardinal shirt right now. But I've become obsessed with it, and almost to the big D level of going into documentaries, which I will be diving very deep into it after we finish Westworld. Time is a little scarce right now, but I really want to know a lot more about it. You mentioned American Me. All my friends from like Maryvale and South Phoenix, every time I bring up Blood In, Blood Out, they talk about American Me and just how fantastic it is, how much I need to see that as well. So that is definitely on my must-watch list, especially since I have a deep affection for Olmos as well.
So that's it for voicemails. Thank you very much. Keep them coming in. Go to the website and you can see the call out on the right-hand side to use our speaker pipe feature. That's what these have been. And Gene, I think the quality of these is much better than Google Voice.
That last one certainly was.
It was fantastic. Crystal clear. We sounded that good.
Mm-hmm.
But next week, we have a movie that a lot of times when we review a film like today, I couldn't tell you where I was. I can tell you the theater I saw it, where I was. It was the last happy moment with my college girlfriend when the Event Horizon, a spacecraft that vanished years earlier, suddenly reappears. A team is dispatched to investigate the ship. Accompanied by the Event Horizon creator, the crew of the Lewis and Clark, led by Captain Miller, begins to explore the seemingly abandoned vessel. However, it soon becomes evident that something sinister resides in its corridors, and that the horrors that befell the Event Horizon's previous journey are still present. Commissioned by Robert W., this came out on my birthday in 1997. And this was a film that I remember loving, even though there were sad times surrounding it.
I'm excited for this one. Thank you, Robert, for commissioning it. And thank you, Kiki, for commissioning So I Married an Axe Murderer. I hope everything is going well at your home and you've got all the beanbag chairs you could possibly want. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media, share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or by commissioning your own movie. Find all information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, Watchmen, and Westworld Season 4. You can find all information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
At 0300 this morning, TDRS picked up an automated navigation beacon broadcasting at 2-minute intervals in Neptune orbit.
This is incredible. It's the Event Horizon. She's come back.
The Event Horizon was the culmination of a secret government project to create a spacecraft capable of faster-than-light flight. The ship doesn't really go faster than light. What it does is it creates a dimensional gateway that allows it to jump instantaneously from one point of the universe to another light years away.
Where's she been for the last 7 years, Doctor?
That's what we're here to find out.
After 7 years in deep space,
There were 18 people on board this ship when it disappeared. I want them all accounted for.
Opening outer door.
it came back abandoned.
Any crew? Negative. This place is a tomb.
But it didn't come back alone.
Captain Miller! I've got some problems here!
This ship has been beyond the boundaries of our universe. Who knows where it's been and what it's brought back with it.
Did you hear that? What is it? The ship is reacting to us and the reactions are getting stronger.
What are you telling me? That this ship is alive?
I have such wonderful things to show you.
Oh my God! It knows my secrets. It knows my fears.
Vacate. I want off this ship.
You can't leave. She won't let you.